Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. Today we'll be continuing a series we started a few weeks ago on the channel where I break down and insult you for liking the things you like. I'm just joking, of course. I do need to think of a formal name for this series, but in the meantime, I put a playlist down in the description if you want to check out the past episodes. So far, we've done ships, and today we'll be talking about your personal fan theories and headcanons. I took submissions on my Twitter page at EckhartsLadder, and we've got hundreds of responses. I've chosen maybe a couple of dozen to cover in today's first video. If you enjoy it, though, I'll be sure to make more. Before we continue, though, a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Audible. As you guys know, this is one of my favorite services. I've got months of Audible time because I love audiobooks, and in my opinion, Audible is the best audiobook service. Audible has always offered an incredible selection of audiobooks across every genre, but now you'll also, with your membership, discover exclusive Audible originals from a ton of different names that you probably know. As an Audible member, you get one title a month to keep from their entire catalog, including new bestsellers, alongside an unlimited amount of audiobooks, Audible originals, and podcasts, with more being added each month. On the Audible app, you can listen everywhere. As I said, my favorite place is in the car. Looking for a recommendation? My go-to when people ask is always the original Thrawn trilogy. Make sure you get the unabridged version. Want to change it up? Well, the Halo audiobooks are a lot of fun, or you can go way different and check out the amazing Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. New members can try Audible free for 30 days at audible.com/EckhartsLadder or by texting EckhartsLadder to 500-500. Alright, so let's get started with the fan theories. And first off, we have Trent, who says the only reason the Holdo maneuver worked is due to the special hyperspace tracking tech on the Supremacy. This is a smart fan theory and one that I would have advocated for because it minimizes the effectiveness of both hyperspace ramming and the OP hyperspace tracking technology. But if you're going past the movies, it doesn't really work. The hyperspace tracking used on the Supremacy seems to be based really on very advanced math. Basically, they have computers doing calculations and checking the probabilities of a ship jumping a certain way, and that's just pretty much how it works. It doesn't really make sense. I've done a short covering that on my Clips channel because you can do unexpected things when traveling through hyperspace, like dropping out. But yeah, Trent, while I like your fan theory, it would be a pretty big contradiction of the existing lore we do have. Next up, we have David, who says, interestingly, that canon is the result of Brackus using the Force to time travel before the Shadow Academy blew up to kill Galen Merrick and try to prevent the rebellion from forming. For those who don't know, Brackus is an expanded universe character, and I mean, this is a fun fan theory. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. For one, everything before that point also changes. The High Republic era, certainly, for better or for worse, didn't exist in Star Wars Legends, and also, I don't think Brackus really would want to travel back and stop the rebellion from forming. He was, under the Emperor, just another Inquisitor. After the Battle of Endor, he had the potential for much more, especially after getting more training from Luke. Alright, the next one is from Adam, who says the EU/Legends books are the stories Rey grew up hearing. I don't like this one because I don't like that implied hierarchy of canons. I like them being separate. I prefer Legends for most things, although there are elements of canon I like as well. And my bigger issue is, had Rey read the Legend stories, she would have known to expect clone Palpatine. I mean, admittedly, Dark Empire is a comic, but is brought up enough times in the subsequent novels that she probably would have been able to see what's going on. The next one is from Ryan, who says the Skywalkers and Palpatines share a common ancestry. This is also one that I just can't get behind. I mean, there are plenty of people powerful in the Force within the galaxy, and I don't see any need to really confine it all down to one bloodline. I mean, they've got very different backgrounds. Obviously, the Skywalkers were most recently slaves on Tatooine. The Palpatines were nobility on Naboo. They're related in the way that Plagueis suggests that Palpatine and his experimenting with the Force may have led to the birth of Anakin, but other than that, I don't think having your sort of avatar for good and avatar for pure evil being from the same individual makes sense, although I guess maybe it does if you want to get really metaphorical, but personally, I don't like that headcanon. Alright, the next one is from Z Capsh, who says there's no actual will of the Force and no balance that can be thrown out of whack because one side has more power and people than the other. I don't think I necessarily agree with that because despite having at times overwhelming advantage, the dark side has never achieved ultimate victory. The galaxy has never ended up completely destroyed, and as I mentioned, things like the birth of Anakin do happen through almost divine will. I think it's pretty difficult to explain away a lot of the other coincidences and things that happen in the galaxy as well. But I also want to focus on that second point. Many rich separatist planets joined the Empire willingly because nothing much would have changed for them. Well, there's a couple of things here. For one, many of the separatists were so vilified by the Republic that it was an easy PR win for the Empire to not only keep fighting them, but to fully wipe them out. It may have not been a sort of choice, but as we see on Mustafar, a decision made by Palpatine. On the other hand, yes, some would have capitulated, but it's not that nothing would have changed for them. As we see in Andor, the Empire was nationalizing and imperializing these big corporations, and the larger ones would have been fully subsumed by the Empire pretty quickly. So these rich separatist leaders would have lost a lot of their power and their wealth, if not also their lives. Alright, next up we have Lex, who says there's no light side or dark side of the Force, simply the Force. It's your intention behind your use of it that determines whether it, and by extension you, are of the light side or the dark. So this is the theory of the unifying Force, and we see it covered especially in the New Jedi Order as Vergir teaches Jason. As far as I'm aware, it's not really been covered explicitly in Star Wars canon, but I ultimately don't agree. This is what leads to things like good side Force lightning. To a degree, certainly yes, your intention can cause you to use the dark side. Yoda says anger, fear, aggression, the dark side of the Force are they. But I mean, fear isn't something that you intentionally use and rely on at all times. Anakin wasn't attempting to do evil when he fell to the dark side. He simply was doing evil. And a lot of Star Wars literature, especially featuring Luke in Star Wars Legends, is about how you can't take the easy way out. Even if you're intending to do the right thing, senseless killing and violence and use of the Force through things like mind probing is still wrong. Certain actions are inherently more evil and more dark side. That's why Yoda says a Jedi uses the Force for defense and not for attack. So yeah, while I think intention does matter, to say that it's all that matters is incorrect, in my opinion. The next one's pretty fun. It's from Robin, who says the full matrix's well on its upper surface is there to accommodate the reactor of a Star Destroyer resting on top. And yeah, if you look at the images, it does line up. That's something people pointed out almost right away, even before the movie came out. Somebody in the comments also pointed out that an ISD looks like it can accommodate 2 Architan's cruisers. The only thing I'd sort of wonder is why? Why do you want to attach 2 very large vessels together? Maybe the power from the reactor is shared or something? I don't know. Fun little detail. The next one is from Seth, and this is one that I actually agree with. He says, not that crazy, but all the turrets we see on Star Destroyers are only their secondary batteries. The big primary guns are all casemates in their Oreo trench. Oreo trench is a term I've used on the channel before to refer to this trench that encircles a Star Destroyer. And yeah, I definitely do think that's the point. They're almost like old naval ships, like a pirate ship even. And if you watch, for example, the Battle of Endor, you will note that most of the fire is coming from the trench around the ship. Alright, next up is Derek, who says, post-Tross understanding of the rule of 2. Since Sith essence and powers can transfer upon death, all Sith have been doing this since Bane to concentrate power over millennia. Power transfers from master to apprentice and builds over time into one Sith to defeat the Jedi Order. This I don't quite agree with because it sort of misses the point of the rule of 2. The rule of 2 is meant to be a natural consequence of Sith power. Had he been able to, Bane would have kept training to defeat the Jedi. Even if he believed he could have done so, he would have taken that opportunity. The rule of 2 was created because he ultimately did want to see the Sith prosper and knew that if he were to be defeated, it should be by a stronger apprentice. It's more about survival of the fittest and the ego of Sith rather than the sort of pile up from Sith becoming more and more powerful. I think if that were the case, you'd want far more than just 2 Sith. You'd want as many as possible, maybe working on their own. I think the Rise of Skywalker is more about the dyad rather than anything else, but just my opinion. Next up, we have Monkal Sushi, who says Snoke was created using the combined DNA of Palpatine and Luke and became a perversion of the eventual Palpatine-Skywalker dyad. I actually like this theory. I don't have a whole lot to say against it. Of course, Luke's missing hand has been up in the air for a long time. In Legends, of course, it was used to create Luke's clone. I don't like the idea of Snoke being this mass cloned thing, but if they are going to do it that way, using Luke is a good idea. Next up, we have Zell, and she has a fun YouTube channel, by the way. She says Plo Koon survived Order 66 / the plane crash. This is one that I almost can't bear to go against. I mean, the man has a pretty rough go. He has the Star Wars version of dying that pilots always get, where despite their ship blowing up, there's still a scene where they can throw their hands back and go, ah. I also just love how she called it a plane crash. So yeah, let's say he did. Why not? Next up, we have Star Wars author Cavan Scott, who says Ewoks will eventually rule the galaxy. I've watched the Ewok things, I've read the Ewok comics, and I think Ewoks are too consumed and too occupied with whimsical adventures to really set their sights beyond their own planet. Whimsy is more fun than conquest. Alright, next up we have Steven, who says it wasn't Mustafar's burns or vapors that damaged Vader most, it was the radiation. Mustafar is based on Io, Jupiter's volcanic moon, and the most irradiated surface in our system due to Jupiter's radiation belts. Mere hours unshielded in Io means lethal radiation exposure. I guess my counterpoint would be Io and Mustafar are very different, and then Mustafar clearly has an atmosphere. You can go on Mustafar without a breather. We see Mustafar in episode 9 and it seems to be returning somewhat to life, so it doesn't look like an irradiated hellhole to me. It looks a lot more like a volcanic planet. Alright, next up we have Jay Clarkey, who says Winter/Akbar lovemaking sessions, that is canon, and then also thinking Luke isn't choking the Gamorrean guards in Return of the Jedi. So this second one has actually been something that I've talked about a lot. As a kid, I never believed Luke was choking the guards. As an adult, I see why people do. They obviously put their hands up near their throat. To me, that was more like a pose of them saying, yes, you can walk by, my arms are crossed. Again, I see why people see choking. There are a couple of things, though, that even as an adult lead me to believe it could be a mind trick. For one, and this is a big one, every single time in the saga, literally every single time on movie or on TV, when someone uses force choke, there's that sound, the whoosh. It's not present here. The script itself also implies a mind trick, the guards move out of their way, and some of the novelizations have also said mind tricks, although I also checked one out the other day. Every time I see a new Return of the Jedi novelization, I always check this, that did explicitly say force choke. So yeah, take for that what you will. As a kid, I didn't think Luke Skywalker had fallen to the dark side nearly enough by the beginning of the movie. Simply wearing a black outfit, it's not enough to justify a force choke. Alright, Steven brings back Darth Bane, who says the rule of two was really just Darth Bane institutionalizing his own immortality. Bane learned a dark side ritual to ensoul himself into a new host at the moment of death, but only if the new host struck him down in anger. Thus, every Sith master since Bane has been Bane. Well, I definitely don't agree with that last part, that Bane's existed for all of them, because there have been different Sith. Like, I think Palpatine is definitely his own guy, especially when we read novels like Plagueis. And we do see a lot of Bane's internal monologue when he is sort of thinking through the rule of two in his first two books, although you see less of Bane in book 3, so I do think it's possible that he passed on his spirit to Xana when she struck him down, and the book is also ambiguous on this point. I don't think he existed in perpetuity or until Sidious was created, but I think it's possible he passed on his spirit to Xana, and I kind of like that theory personally. Sarah brings us back to Bane by saying the Force is a zero-sum force, meaning there's a limited amount of it to go around. The more people are drawing on it, the weaker their access to it. Thus the reason why Kylo and Rey can do crazy stuff, etc., etc. Now this is also what Darth Bane felt. He thought that the dark side was sort of like water, and that if you had too many buckets, that each one would have less water and thus be less powerful. I don't think that really matches how I think of the Force. I always go back to Yoda, because I think he gives the most accurate view of what George Lucas saw the Force to be in episode 5. The Force is created by living beings. It surrounds us, as Yoda says. It comes from everything, not just people, but even trees. I think theoretically the Force would be empowered by more people, and just that some have better access to it. Like, I don't see it as Darth Bane sort of describes it. Rather, I think some people just have the greater ability to harness the Force. That's why they're Jedi, not because they've got a big sort of amount of Force around them at once. We're going to end off, because this video is getting a little long, with James, who says, this was a crazy one I've seen floated. Humans were transported or migrated from the Milky Way to the Star Wars galaxy. I think there was even an unofficial book that explored the idea, having trouble finding the title. I never liked this theory just because the physics in Star Wars are so fundamentally different from our own. I mean, relativity in Star Wars doesn't exist. People can travel faster than the speed of light with no relativistic effects on time. They can go near black holes. There's instantaneous faster than light communication. The physics of space just don't operate like we expect them to. There's so many things that I prefer just to think of Star Wars as being its completely own thing. But yeah, just me. Thanks for all the submission, guys. If you want to get involved in the next one of these, whether it's ships, fan theories, or something else, make sure you follow me on Twitter. I'm going to include a link down in the description and in a pinned comment. Special thank you again to Audible for sponsoring this long video. Hopefully you don't mind that I'm insulting my fans on this video that you've sponsored. But guys, until next time, thanks for being around. I love you, and may the Force be with you.